Hey everyone, welcome back to Noiseberry Games. So the demo for a highly anticipated Dark Souls 3 mod called Dark Souls Archthrones was recently finally made available. It's a project I've had my eye on as a massive Dark Souls fan for several years at this point. I think it was announced a couple of years ago. And the demo was finally released on March 15th, 2024. So as a massive Dark Souls fan, of course, I had to take a look at it. It just from the Nexus mod page or even their website, it's not entirely clear how much content is in the demo. It seems like there's a lot, but I actually only played, I think my total playtime was just an hour 15 minutes, and then I decided that I would wait for the full version. I think it's very cool that the demo is available and seemingly has so much content, but it needs a little bit of work, as I'll get into in this video, and I thought I would just rather wait for it to be balanced, have some tweaks ironed out, and just to get the full experience. I do think that means I'll be waiting a while. I saw on a Reddit thread, I think, that the full version isn't planned to be released until next year, 2025, so I will just have to be patient and bide my time. So what is Archthrones? It's an overhaul mod made by the Archthrones team. If you go to their website, which I'll have in the description, it goes over all the team members. It's a massive overhaul mod for Dark Souls 3. It barely even uses Dark Souls 3. A lot of Dark Souls 3 mods, I'm thinking of Cinders, and I think it was Convergence, all are kind of, they use the base of Dark Souls 3 and kind of expand on it in, branch out in little ways. This one is a completely new thing, as you'll hopefully be seeing in the gameplay on the screen. If you're familiar with Dark Souls 3, you'll probably notice that the starting area is completely different, the areas look different. It's heavily inspired by Demon Souls, which is quite good because there's still no real way of playing Demon Souls, especially the remake on PC. If you just look at the logo for Dark Souls Archthrones, it uses the Demon Souls logo font, so very heavily inspired by Demon Souls. The opening tutorial area is very, very similar to the Demon Souls tutorial. It even has the exact same boss at the end that you're supposed to die to, or you're not really expected to survive. The Vanguard Demon is at the end of this tutorial as well. When you reach the hub area, it's just like Demon Souls, just like the Nexus. You've got these 5 Archthrones in the case of this mod, and they're completely separate worlds. Dark Souls 3 to a lesser extent than Dark Souls 1 is quite a connected world. When you're in High Wall of Lothric, you can branch out to a couple of different areas, and those areas will carry on to other areas and so on. In Demon Souls, you basically had 5 different worlds, and they were completely separate. You couldn't go into World 1 and make your way to World 2. You just go into World 1 and you finish World 1, pretty much. And that's how Archthrones is laid out as well, so very, very like Demon Souls. The Nexus mod page says the design of the game has been inspired by Demon Souls level structure, which we've gone over. Relive some of the most memorable areas of the entire trilogy within one mod, with reinterpretations of iconic characters and some interpretations you've only seen in item descriptions. So when you get to the hub area, the Firekeeper in this game is very, very reminiscent of the Maiden in Black from Demon Souls. There's a character who is essentially Stockpile Thomas from Demon Souls. There's a vendor who's there in place of the Shrine Handmaid, who I'm not totally familiar, but seems like might be using a model and an animation from Sekiro, possibly. Obviously not very familiar with Sekiro, but he's he's whittling away, which definitely made me think of that one guy in Sekiro. Once you've put the coiled sword into the bonfire, which is what you do in Dark Souls 3 as well, this caused my game to crash, but luckily there is a workaround where you just downpatch your Dark Souls 3 EXE to a previous version, and that totally fixed my problems, so that was good. Once you've done that, the game opens up. You're allowed to choose any of the 5 thrones up above you, and you go behind each of the thrones, and there'll be a glowing sword, glowing light, and you interact with that, and it takes you into the world. So I just, in Demon Souls, you kind of mostly go, if you're facing the thrones or the stones, you go left to right. The very first one on your left is the easiest world. Then you can kind of do any of the other worlds in any order you want, but it is kind of advisable to do a bit of World 1, then World 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. So facing the Archthrones in this mod, I thought it would be similar. So I went into World 1, and I was overjoyed to see that I was in a reimagining of Hyde's Tower of Flame from Dark Souls 2. It was called something different in here, something Phoenix and Irithyll or something, but it was 100% the layout from Hyde's Tower of Flame. It had the big stone knights from Hyde's Tower. You could see off in the distance the Cathedral of Blue. I was ready to get stuck into it. And I got completely demolished by everything that I saw. Did no damage to any of the enemies, so I thought, okay, even though this is in the, what I would assume to be like the easiest world position, must not be meant to do this one. So backed out, went back to the Nexus, and chose the second world. And the second world, I was slightly less overjoyed, but still pretty overjoyed to see I was in Frozen Ilium Lois from Dark Souls 2. Now, Hyde's Tower of Flame is pretty much the second area of Dark Souls 2. So in Dark Souls 2, it's a decently easy area. Ilium Lois is from the DLC. It's a very tough area with some very strong enemies. And once again, I got completely destroyed by every enemy I came across. So at this point, I tabbed out and I looked around. I googled like Dark Souls Archthrones best starting area. And I found a very helpful Reddit post from like, just yesterday, I think. And it was a screenshot, and it said, for anyone struggling with the mod, this is the area you're supposed to start with. And it's the third Archthrone, which is kind of confusing. Like, there's nowhere on the website or the Nexus mod page with like a suggested progression order, which I think would have been very, very useful. So I hopped into the third world, and it was called War-Torn Village, I think. And I was much less overjoyed to see that this was essentially the village level from Dark Souls 3. You know, very much tweaked, but the layout of the level was exactly the same as whatever the village is called, the one right after High Wall. And I was somewhat pleased to see that there were enemies in here that I could actually attack. At this point, I think I'd maybe done one level up just from selling a soul item. I think that I took it as my starting gift. So I'd managed to get one more level. I was able to kill some enemies. Still, the very first enemy was one that I had to run away from because it was a giant Lothric Knight, and those are very tough. And so even though I was able to kill a couple of enemies, and even though this is supposedly the starting area of the mod, I still found myself running past every enemy, just trying to make some progress, find some items, do anything interesting I could. And I was kind of surprised to see that even the fairly weak enemies still took a few more hits than I was expecting, or kind of took like one more hit than I would expect them to take. And as I progressed, I eventually found my way to a boss fight. I liked that as I approached the arena, it was very clear this was going to be a boss fight. The setting was where the one of the stray demons that you fight with Sigurd in Dark Souls 3, that's where that fight took place. And as I walked in, I was attacked by the pus-afflicted beast or whatever, which was essentially the cleric beast from Bloodborne, which was very cool that they've got that in the game. Just like the cleric beast though, I was doing pretty much no damage to it. Right before I went into the fight, I was given three or five charcoal pine bundles, which is the very short duration fire buff for your weapon. So I figured probably needed fire for the boss, so I did one attempt just to try it out. Didn't do much damage to it. Did a second attempt with fire on my weapon. Did a little bit more damage, but definitely not as much as I was expecting. So I thought, maybe, like Cleric Beast, this is a boss that you can fight early on, but you can definitely leave it for later, so that's what I decided to do. So I progressed through kind of the other direction back to what would have been the start of the village level in Dark Souls 3. And I got right to the very start. There was a bonfire where it was in the original, and on the bridge where you come down to in actual Dark Souls 3, there was what looked to me to be another boss arena. So went in there, and lo and behold, a big enemy started standing up. He was a big golem-looking fella, and he towered above me, so I could pretty much only just hack at his ankles. And so that instantly made me think, maybe this is going to be like the Tower Knight boss fight from Demon Souls. So I wailed away on his ankles, and lo and behold, one of his ankles, after I'd done enough damage, got this glowing effect. In Demon Souls, when you chip away at the Tower Knight's ankles, he'll start spurting like blue fire from his ankles when you've done enough damage. And once you've done enough damage to both of his legs, he will collapse, and then you go and attack his head for massive damage. So once one ankle was glowing, I switched over to the other one. Eventually managed to get him both his ankles to be glowing, and he did indeed topple over. So I went around to his head, I got like 3 attacks in, and up he got. And when you attack the Tower Knight in the head, you do tons of damage. One cycle of attacking his head will do probably like 70% of his health. I did like 10% of this guy's health using the same Tower Knight strategy. So I was pretty disappointed because I was doing barely any damage to his ankles, which I was expecting, but I was definitely expecting to do a lot more damage to his head. And I thought, like, to beat this guy, I'm gonna have to do this whole thing probably like 4 or 5 times. And the lock-on his legs was just kind of janky, so when he killed me, I thought, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to wait for the full release. If that had been all, I potentially would have kept going, but on the day I was playing, the team posted on the Nexus Mods page, they said, "We're working on a patch to address the raised issues with balance and several bugs that were reported. Don't give up, skeleton." Even though, they said don't give up, but this post did actually cause me to give up because I would rather wait for a more balanced version of the game. And pretty much if you look for any thread or post, I found a couple on Reddit about Archthrones, you'll see people saying that it's very promising, but the balance is ridiculous. You do hardly any damage to enemies. They're all, health sponges. They just take too many hits. They've all got too much poise. You're far too squishy. You don't do any damage, pretty much. And that was pretty much the thing that killed it for me. Everything felt far too imbalanced. It felt way too hard. Just the fact that I was instantly struggling in the very first area was very demoralizing. And I know it's the demo, but I don't know, I was really expecting balance issues not to be the biggest issue coming out of the demo, but it definitely seems like it is. On the positive side, like I think I alluded to in the title, this mod looks amazing. The fact that I can see Hyde's Tower pretty much recreated in Dark Souls 3 is so cool. The fact that the Firelink Nexus is set at like a completely different time of day. If you look up, I think it's got the Archdragon Peak skybox, which is a really bright skybox, and it's a really cool, bright environment. So you could see that in this lovely, lush green, welcoming hub area. I absolutely loved that. The lighting and like time of day in the village is awesome. It's just a very different lighting than you would see in the original Dark Souls 3. You've got all these lovely red leaf trees that are very reminiscent of Sekiro. Just every area looks incredible. The new armor sets, I picked up a new armor set and a new weapon, look absolutely amazing. So as of right now, the mod absolutely looks better than it is to play. Hopefully that changes in the future. Like I said, I don't believe the full version is planned until 2025, but I am so excited for the full version, and hopefully they'll have tweaked a lot of the balance, because yeah, the damage output and how tanky enemies were was very, very demoralizing in this. So I will absolutely be keeping an eye on it. I didn't even mention it. It's got their own servers, which is incredible. So right now you can actually just play co-op with friends. I found the servers were kind of iffy. It only let me sign in once. And then when I crashed, it just wouldn't let me sign back in, annoyingly. But I assume that'll be ironed out. Right now you can't invade on their servers, but obviously that will come in the full version at some point. So 100% a project to keep an eye on. I will definitely be keeping an eye on it, but I think I will be leaving it until full release, I think. I don't think there's much point in playing it, for me personally, until it's completely ironed out and is the best version it can be. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!